Hey everyone, it's Vivi and welcome to another Ratchet and Clank video. As you've noticed from the disclaimer warning part at the beginning of the video, yes, I am going to dive into a more sensitive topic. Alister Azimuth, at first glance, is a stubborn character. That's how you see him. But if you take the time to deeply analyze his character, you start to feel like there's something else about him. And that explains the sensitive part of the video. Alister Azimuth, from A Crack in Time, the only Lombax Ratchet ever meets. Let's not think about going commando, okay? Azimuth basically grew up with Kaidan. They had a bunch of adventures, activities, and get-togethers. Hoverbooting in Krell Canyon, secret missions in Auroch Minor, Kaidan sneaking into the Agorian Battleplex, winning at the age of 16 at the most. They'd visit Kaidan's girlfriend, Ratchet's mother-to-be, on planet Vipedia. All this information, by the way, comes from Unused, Dialogue of Azimuth, by user CrashDance22. The link will be in the description below. If you want to listen to the whole thing, go ahead. As these two grew older, Azimuth joined the Lombax Praetorian Guards and became councilman, also known for the creation of the Court of Azimuth, hence the name. At a certain point of his youth, he felt the galaxy needed more protection. Even if the Kragmites were gone eons ago, Azimuth had the thought of wanting to protect the galaxy, regardless. Cue the introduction of the inventor, Tachyon, Percival Tachyon. Alister's best friend, Kaidan, Ratchet's father, told Azimuth not to trust this individual. Tachyon's knowledge and intellect persuaded Alister to share with him all Lombax technology, and with that came chaos. Percival Tachyon, whenever he found out about his ancestors, he wanted revenge. Thanks to the Lombax technology provided by Alister, the Lombaxes were outmatched. You can't help but wonder how the Lombaxes even were outsmarted by their own tech. Tachyon must have built such a big army to take down. He didn't take down all Lombaxes, but he did take the lives of some Lombaxes. The Lombax race used the Dimensionator to escape to another dimension. Kaidan remained behind to try and save his family. He was too late. The moment the Lombaxes realized Tachyon was up to no good, Alister was exiled. That's what we believed when it comes to the time frame. Someone who was no longer deemed worthy of respect. He was known as an intruder to the Lombaxes. That is, until Alister meets Ratchet more than 10 years later, who he quickly recognized as Kaidan's son. We still wonder why Alister never called Ratchet by his real name. Is it a case of Azimuth being unaware of his true name? Or is this a case of not wanting to remind himself of the mistake he made? Or he probably just didn't want to distract Ratchet? What do you think? Alister, according to the unheard dialogue, he should have been aware of Ratchet being born. Let me play it.
But you know what? I don't think I've ever seen him happier. Except, of course, for the day he had you.
If Alister was aware of the way Kaidan felt when Ratchet was born, that tells us Alister knew that Ratchet was born, right? Unless this is an age thing where memory comes to play. Alister, I estimate him being in his 50s. For a little while, everything sailed smoothly for Azimuth. Ratchet seeing him as this wise, elderly man who knows the in and outs of defending the galaxy. Ratchet even calls him General. Ratchet, out of curiosity, wants to know what happened to the Lombaxes. If there's Azimuth, a Lombax, then surely one would wonder, where's the rest? This is the point where Ratchet sees this new side of him, a side of Azimuth he's been keeping hidden in him, something he's been emotionally fighting over for a good number of years. He didn't show it at first, as to not cause any distractions, or the case of having too many questions being asked by Ratchet. But at a point, he just couldn't hold the truth anymore. He had to spell it out.
You ask all these questions. Ask yourself this. How relevant is the past when it can be changed? Your father would have said not very.
That's him. And you still haven't given me a straight answer. Now why aren't you with the Lombaxes?
Because I failed them! I failed them. I made a mistake.
The way he lashes out to Ratchet because I failed them, and Ratchet's reaction, well, that tells us Alister has been dealing with this torment for a long time. At a point your mind just gets flooded with so many things that at a point you just feel like bursting. Sort of like a mental breakdown, either through anger or even tears. People handle these things in different ways. Alister starts off with anger, and then transitions to sadness, like something he did not want to remind himself, suddenly resurfacing, like a haunting memory. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if what Azimuth experienced right here are symptoms of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It can take years for some patients to feel better, and PTSD does act differently on the individual. As for Azimuth's case, surely perhaps for years, living in exile, he learned to cope with it, warding off Nefarious and Vorsalon, and with the delusional optimism of finding and using the Great Clock to rewind time. That's how he probably coped with all of his angers and emotional struggles. With Ratchet in the picture, it triggered memories he was trying to hide. And with that, he 1. Lashes out. He raises his voice. And 2. He suddenly just falls down, sits on the ground and is all sad, and explains to Ratchet what happened in the past. PTSD comes with negative emotions. He's not really experiencing that here, okay? According to Mayo Clinic, negative changes in thinking and mood, symptoms of negative changes in thinking and mood may include negative thoughts about yourself, other people, or the world, hopelessness about the future, memory problems, including not remembering important aspects of the traumatic event, difficulty maintaining close relationships, feeling detached from family and friends, lack of interest in activities you once enjoyed, difficulty experiencing positive emotions, feeling emotionally numb. Alister didn't experience any of these from the looks of things, him being with Ratchet in a crack in time, but avoidance is what he's been struggling with. Symptoms of avoidance may include trying to avoid thinking or talking about the traumatic event, avoiding places, activities, or people that remind you of the traumatic event. The first part especially. Trying to avoid thinking or talking about that traumatic event, the battle with Tachyon. So what happens next for Azimuth? He believes by locating the theorized Great Clock, he can bring back the Lombaxes. He also puts emphasis on Ratchet's family. Part of him is always constantly thinking of Caden, his best friend, the one person he grew up with. By undoing what he did, he will regain respect from the Lombaxes and get his spot back. He's not doing this to regain power or regain social status. Alister was determined to do this as a way towards redemption, undo the mistake he made trusting Percival Tachyon. This doesn't seem to be a case of interpersonal rejection. According to summary by author Mark R. Leary, interpersonal rejection ranks among the most potent and distressing events that people experience. Romantic rejection, ostracism, stigmatization, job termination, and other kinds of rejects have the power to compromise the quality of people's lives. As a result, people are highly motivated to avoid social rejection, and indeed, much of human behavior appears to be designed to avoid such experiences. I also don't think this is a case of full-on anxiety. According to Healthline, symptoms of anxiety are as follows: nervousness, restlessness, or being tense, feelings of danger, panic, or dread, rapid heart rate, rapid breathing or hyperventilation, increased or heavy sweating, trembling or muscle twitching, weakness and lethargy, difficulty focusing or thinking clearly about anything other than the thing you're worried about. If anything, Azimuth does have difficulty thinking clearly. He's fixated, obsessed on finding the Great Clock. I don't think he has a sign of OCD, where constant obsession triggers compulsions. Obsessions are typically accompanied by intense and uncomfortable feelings such as fear, disgust, doubt, or a feeling that things have to be done in a way that is just right. In the context of OCD, obsessions are time-consuming and get in the way of important activities the person values. We can't really say how exactly Azimuth was dealing with all this when he was on his own, preoccupied with other things. We don't know how he felt then, so we can't jump to the conclusion and say he's OCD. While OCD could have developed, the longer Ratchet and Azimuth, let's say, would fail at discovering the clock, him being fixated on the possibility of saving the Lombaxes, and it not coming to fruition after so long, he's gonna start losing it even further. He already looks to be struggling with that burden. The longer it takes, the more it's just gonna start eating away his mind. As determined and loyal he is towards Ratchet, there is one dark cloud over his head. Irrational behavior, and not to mention a lot of built-up anger over the years. Him lashing out on Ratchet was the first sign of anger, but there's more. When Alister was captured by Vorsalon, Ratchet went in to save him. Let me play it.
You can go there for a while, but the old Lombax instinct kicked in and,
Fool! I told you to leave me, You shouldn't have come back!
Wow, that was not the reaction I was expecting. You know, General, it's not like I've been here just sitting around all day. I've traveled back in time, found out what happened to Orvis.
Back in time? When? How far?
Not far enough.
It's just... we're the only ones who can fix the past. I'm proud of you, Ratchet.
Just his body language here. He's fuming. After rescuing Clank from the Valkyries, he also shows signs of anger. Body language again. And then suddenly he goes neutral. Stubbornness. Not a mental disorder, really, but he is stubborn. That's the easiest way to describe Alister Azimuth. He's stubborn, he won't listen. He's very single-minded. Both of these easily brought about his demise. As said before, we don't exactly know how Azimuth lived before discovering Ratchet. However it was, I wouldn't be surprised if Azimuth at least deals with mental illness. He has symptoms from a varied category of mental illnesses, living with that constant burden, blaming himself for what he did for years perhaps, constantly believing that the Great Clock is the solution, regardless of what Clank and Ratchet believe. He's obsessed. What I liked about A Crack in Time, it introduced us to a certain moral dilemma. It makes you think whether or not you'll love Azimuth as a character or not. Well, technically, you can love him as a character, but what I'm leaning towards is his motives, his way of thinking, if people agree with it or not. And I think you know where this is going. Have you ever heard of the trolley problem? This image right here. The would you rather dilemma. Would you rather pull the trigger to save one person or a group of people? Applying this logic to Crack in Time, Clank and Ratchet warned Azimuth that the clock is not a time machine. Using it more than 6 minutes can be very disastrous and cause destruction of the galaxy. What Alister was doing saved the Lombaxes along with Ratchet's family, of course, by risking the lives of millions across the galaxy. Let me play this scene.
If there's even a chance it could destroy the universe, the risk is just too great.
Risk? Risk is what makes us who we are. Ratchet, our kind is lost without us. Think of how many that clock can save. Think of your parents.
I'm sorry. We need to stop Nefarious before he makes the same mistake we almost did.
He even says the word risk. Risk? Risk is what makes us who we are. Our kind is lost without us. Azimuth here is clearly making the decision for everyone, and that's where the line is crossed. Sure, Azimuth is trying to save the Lombaxes, but he's making the decision for them, and the millions of citizens across the galaxy. It's not like he got the galaxy's consent on what he's doing. Hey, by the way, you guys might die because I'm trying to bring back the Lombaxes, the people who can save this galaxy. What he's implying here is basically, hey, you guys can't defend yourselves without Lombaxes. And as for the Lombaxes, they wouldn't even know what Azimuth did. Alister would all be quiet. Maybe. If Azimuth were to open his mouth and tell the Lombaxes what happened, that he rewind time and all that, they'd probably shun him, or react in a way he was not expecting. Imagine yourself in a situation where people are in danger. Would you rather sacrifice you and your family to save millions? I mean, at first glance you'll see it as, well, we're saving millions of lives. Yes, but ultimately, the ethical thing to do here is to have your family's consent. Like, yes, we accept to sacrifice ourselves to save millions. The decision has to be made by the group. And clearly here Azimuth is thinking all by himself. He refuses to cooperate and is fixated on his own thinking process. Oh, did I forget to mention? Irrational behavior? Well, that clearly escalated here. So much anger and obsession towards his delusional objective, and boom, he burst. Ratchet falls to his death. He just killed a Lombax. His own species. His best friend's son. Okay, maybe he thought, I mean, who cares? I'm going to rewind time. He won't even remember this. But that's not it. The act of doing so. Having the will to kill his friend. Well, his best friend's child. Azimuth had so much anger bottled up. We saw some of it from the clips before. This right here, I mean, it's intense. This is a case of strong impulsive aggression. So you guys might think, Vivi, if you believe Azimuth was mentally ill, does that explain his violence? Well, actually, that's a myth. According to research, according to mental health website Myths and Facts, myth, people with mental health problems are violent and unpredictable. Fact, the vast majority of people with mental health problems are no more likely to be violent than anyone else. Most people with mental illness are not violent, and only 3 to 5% of violent acts can be attributed to individuals living with a serious mental illness. In fact, people with severe mental illnesses are over 10 times more likely to be victims of violent crime than the general population. You probably know someone with a mental health problem and don't even realize it, because many people with mental health problems are highly active and productive members of our community. Has Azimuth showed any signs of violence? Not really, until he killed Ratchet. Kill him because he felt he was in the way. He feared Ratchet would stop him. Whatever he thought of Ratchet, regardless of relations and race, he just kills him. That looks to be a personality disorder, BPD, borderline personality disorder. In an area characterized by considerably less research, empirical evidence indicates that individuals with borderline personality disorder may exhibit physical violence toward partners, physical violence toward known but non-intimate individuals, criminal behaviors that embody externalized violence, and, on very rare occasion, murderous behavior, either of family members or anonymous others through serial killing. So wait, if Azimuth is mentally ill, then the violence is not the cause of it. These statements sound contradictory because BPD falls within the library of mental illnesses. Violence, what I believe, falls within how Ratchet was treated until this specific moment. Did Azimuth hurt Ratchet until this moment? No. So to go to such lengths, in the end, someone you met who felt very close to you after all these years, you kill him because he disagrees with you? And don't forget, they fight afterwards. Azimuth even says this: "Impressive. I was sure he'd be dead by now." His intent is on killing Ratchet. He doesn't care what it takes. Sure, he was doing it to save his race, but this is insane. Remember what I said before. He was making the decision for everyone. So right there and then, I'm against him. Not that I hate him as a character. He brought upon this moral dilemma which brought up a very compelling story to crack in time. And also, what Docent 427 said, the robot from the Intergalactic Museum, Alister Azimuth, he was a great Lombax, until shame and anger got the best of him. To many, he is the villain who put the universe in jeopardy, for selfish reasons. To others, he is a hero whose only crime was wanting to correct a mistake. Last thing for the video. This question is something I got in the comments a couple of times. Did Ratchet know Alister killed him? Nope. Clank rewind time by 6 minutes. Ratchet would have no idea what happened. His body, his mind got rewind. As for Clank, technically, if you're rewinding time, you're not traveling to the past. You're rewinding time. Think of how you restore your computer to an earlier point of time. Your mind would technically get rewind as well. So wait, if Clank's mind would get rewind, how would he even remember that Ratchet even felt his death? Yes, he does see the laser coming from Azimuth's wrench, but how would he remember that Ratchet really fell off the platform? Now that's a good question, eh? If he didn't remember, then there's 0 point to this debate. If he forgot about Ratchet's death, even after what he saw, we wouldn't even be asking the question whether or not he would tell Ratchet the truth. Clank's origin, after all, is zony. It's possible this rewind doesn't affect his mind. So when it comes to telling the truth or not, we stick to the idea that Clank does remember, most likely due to his zony nature. If you've read the comics, Ratchet thinks back to Alister. He never knew he was killed by him. He just felt it was time to shut himself, fearing that someone else close to him might be in danger. This scene right here, Ratchet felt guilty, as if he's putting the blame on him. This just goes to show, even if Alister risked the universe, Ratchet had empathy towards Alister Azimuth. But would all this change if Clank were to tell Ratchet the truth? Why is he even hiding the truth from Ratchet? Do you feel like it's something he should be honest about? Or do you feel like if Clank brings it up, it's gonna cause too much emotional distress for Ratchet? What do you think? Another thing, let's not forget, what made Alister Azimuth realize he made a mistake was to see it with his own 2 eyes. He wouldn't listen until he saw the great clock going haywire. During that instant, he thought he messed up. He had to see danger in front of him in order to finally accept that what he was doing was completely wrong. So then he felt his time was over. He thought the only way to prevent all this was to take his own life. The fact it took him to see it with his own 2 eyes, and the time it took to finally acknowledge what the heck was happening, tells us that Alister Azimuth was dealing with his own demons. To be so stubborn, to actually go to lengths to murder your best friend's kid due to this crazy obsession of trying to bring back the Lombaxes for a mistake you did? Yeah, it's pretty intense. Now, on the part where Alister thought it was time to go, risk his life to save millions, was he aware that trying to fix what he did would cost him his life? Or was he hoping that he would get out of it in one piece, while also undoing what he did? I believe the former. He knew there was a risk trying to undo the Great Clock, and he was willing to sacrifice himself for the galaxy. It's not like he told everyone, run, this is a dangerous situation. No, let me play the cutscene.
I'm so sorry. No, let me.
What are you gonna do?
Take care of yourself, Ratchet.
The line, "I'm so sorry," and the tone of his voice indicates shame, that he now knows that he can't bring the Lombaxes back. It's too big of a price to pay for the galaxy. From the get-go, him saying "I'm sorry" could just be that, apologizing to Ratchet and Clank for what he did. But he could also be saying sorry to the Lombaxes and even Kaidan. Notice how he doesn't look at Clank and Ratchet while saying "I'm so sorry." He felt it was time for him to say goodbye. He knew there was a risk, a high risk, of death. I wouldn't call this a case of suicide. There's suicide and sacrifice. Suicide. The individual has the intent of taking his or her life. One of the many factors for one taking their life could be due to severe depression. These demons in one's mind leads one to end themselves. Why? Some feel like they no longer have any purpose. Their minds are so sadly caught up in shadows. The only way to escape it all is to end it all. As for Azimuth, he didn't have severe depression from the stuff we've seen, which could cause one to think of death. If Alister had severe depression, him wanting to take his own life could have happened earlier in his life. But we can't really say that because, like I said before, we don't really know how he lived before meeting Ratchet. As I also said previously, if he was with Ratchet, and they had so much trouble finding the Great Clock, the longer they would go at it, the longer Azimuth would start losing it. As for the borderline personality disorder, which I did mention for Azimuth, it does have ties to suicide. Research says that borderline personality disorder does have 10% rate of suicide. However, I'm not calling what Azimuth did suicide, but more of a sacrifice. He told Ratchet to step back. Right there and then he made a decision. He told Ratchet to take care, like a goodbye message. Perhaps he thought he could no longer bear the thought of living with this big mistake. Deep down in his mind, he probably thought of that. And perhaps also thought of joining Kaidan in the afterlife. This is ultimately sacrifice. But subconsciously, Azimuth simply wanted to see his best friend again. This whole moral dilemma in A Crack in Time is a very interesting topic, so with that being said, I'm gonna wrap up the video. What do you think of Alister Azimuth? Do you like him as a character? Do you have empathy for him? After what he did? After sacrificing himself? After realizing his mistake? I'd like to hear your own thoughts in the comments section below. Alright guys, so with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'm Vivi, and until next time.